because I always forget. There we go. And now on to the main event. Our guest has 14 years of experience flying the Reno air races in the biplane class. And she also announces the air races in person and also on an internet stream. And so presenting all of the ins and outs of the Reno air races, please welcome Marilyn Dash.
Hi, everyone. I have a little bit of a cough, so if I may sound a little weird, but let's just do what we can with it. But thank you very much for joining us tonight. And I was hoping that I would have this on my screen in front of me, but it's
we can see it.
Yeah, you could see it, but I'm looking this way to see it. But I'll just keep looking back and forth. So as Jeff mentioned, I've been with the Reno Air Races. I started in, well, I'll start the presentation and it'll tell you all about it. But we're going to go through a little bit about my history, about how I got involved with the air races, and then where we are now and where we're going. So hopefully that will be of interest to everyone. If you have any questions, like Jeff said, please put them in the chat. We'll take all the questions at the end. And before I started flying, it's so funny because Hiller was so very important to my flying, to me making the decision to become a pilot. So I was from the East Coast and I moved to California for a job. I was in the high tech field, and I was first generation American. So my dad was driving us, and we saw the whole country. My father was very involved in making sure that we saw all of our national monuments. I mean, we had one of those pop-up trailers, and we just drove everywhere in an Impala and a pop-up trailer. So I see a chat coming in. Not sure how.
I don't think.
Oh, okay. So Connor, I was from New Jersey. You could probably tell from my accent if I get tired. So I moved to California in 1991. I was a management consultant in Silicon Valley, high tech. I was traveling all the time. I was very busy. I had season tickets to the Giants, to the 49ers, and to the Sharks. I was living life large. And then all of a sudden, I was driving up 101 one day, and I saw this big sign outside the Hiller Aviation Museum to be. It was before they opened up, and it said volunteers wanted. And I thought that would be a fun thing to do. I was very involved in history. I've always loved history. And I thought it would be kind of fun. So I got to meet, I call him Mr. H, and I got to meet Willie. And the next thing I knew, I got to meet Bud Field. I don't know if anybody remembers Bud. Bud was over in the Hayward Airport area, and he had, when I first met him, he had 27 vintage airplanes, and he was the president of the EAA/BAA chapter, which is the Vintage Aircraft Association chapter. And between Mr. Hiller and Willie's mom and Bud Field, they dragged me over and made me get my license. So I was 37 years old when I finally got my pilot's license. So anybody who says, oh, I'm too old to really, no, you're not. I went over to the West Valley Flying Club in Palo Alto, and I started working on the Citabria, which is the tail dragger. And slowly but surely, I moved to Diamond Aviation, which was at San Carlos, and I worked with Karen Morris. And rest in peace, Karen. And she had an airplane called a Katana, which I named my cat after at some point. And then, I was at San Carlos all the time. Karen said, my husband races at the Reno Air Races. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. What's that? And she's like, well, why don't you come up and you'll be our guest for the day? And we flew up in a bunch of 172s. And that was my first time ever there. And I think it was 1999 was my first time there. And so I finally got my pilot's license in November, right before Thanksgiving in 1999. And I bought this beautiful little airplane called Daisy. This was my PA 140 Cherokee. She was a good girl. I had her for many years. And then in 2003, in 2001, I started doing aerobatics. I met a couple of people that were with the Sean D. Tucker School of Aerobatic Flight, now known as TUTIMA. And I started working, starting to do some aerobatics, and I would do some competition aerobatics, which I think is incredibly valuable for any pilot. It's just so important for you to understand what's going on with your airplane, what happens if it's in an unusual If you're upside down, what do? Don't pull, you push, because they were inverted. And all of those controls, it gives you a lot more. I always used to say it trains the fear away from you. So anything that you're afraid of, get some training in it, and then you'll no longer be afraid of it, because now you understand why it does what it does, etc. So I started doing competition aerobatics. And one thing that I noticed is anytime that you're looking to make headway into an organization, the best thing for you to do to gain footage is to volunteer. So I was always volunteering at contests. I volunteered to write articles for the magazine. I was always volunteering to do something, the stuff that no one wants to do. Those are the best ones to volunteer for. And you'll see that as a theme throughout my life. So in 2003, I finally broke down and bought my second airplane. When this is Ruby. This is Ruby Red Racing was my racing team, and Ruby is an S1S. It's a Pitts Special, and I bought it from another person who actually raced it and used it in aerobatic contests as well. So she had a good lineage back then. She was known as Slick at that time, and she was number 2. And as you can see in my world, she's number 4. And this is a picture that was taken, I can't even tell you what year, probably 4 or 5, 2004, 2005. And I was looking down at the photographers that were on the pylon and waving to them. And I had just passed a bunch of people, which is so unusual for, a rookie and someone in the first couple of years. And I was just having such a great time with it. I thought I would just wave to the photographers and to the pylon judges on the ground. So as time went on, so I got Ruby in 2003. And when you want to race at Reno, there's a lot of steps that you need to take. So the first thing I needed to do was go to pylon racing school, and it's pylon racing seminar. We call it rookie school. And it's held every year now in June. It started in 1997 or 98. Before that, if you wanted to race at Reno, you just showed up like a couple days earlier, and you'd get kind of teched out by the class president, and just fingers crossed you knew what you were doing. But they started to get a little bit more logical about it, and they put together this pylon racing school. And it's a mixture of ground school, going over the bylaws and the operational things. How do we get on the course? How do we get off the course? What happens what do the flags mean? People don't even realize that there's flags that we all see. And all of these things that are go on behind the scenes. Like, most of the people just see the actual racing, but there's so much more to it. And all of that is trained at PRS. The Reno requirements, like I said, the ground school, you need to go to ground school to learn all of these, the operational side. There's formation flying. Basically, racing at Reno is competitive formation flying. Everybody wants to be lead, and no one wants to stop being lead. So you're all battling out to be first in line. And so the next thing that they do, they teach you a lot of formation flying. They teach you a Reno pylon race simulation, so you know what an actual race is going to be like when you get there in September. Then you either pass your check ride or you don't pass your check ride. And I remember when I got my little piece of paper that said that I passed, and I was like goofy. I was super, super happy about that. And you are certified race pilot. I think I might even have it around here somewhere on my desk, my license. But that was pretty incredible for me. So each class right now we have 7 classes. It was 6 until last year, or 2 years ago, I should say. 2019 was the first time we had the Stoll drag races at the Reno Air Races. Prior to that, it was 6 races. And before that, when I started, we only had 4. Since I started, the sport class developed and the jet class developed, and now we're up to 6. And then now we just added the Stoll. But each class has its own requirements, and they're all all various. In the sport, the classes, has anybody been to the races? I know that there's a couple of people out there that I know. Hi, Susan, how are you? And and I know there's a lot of people out there that have been to the races. But some of the classes will start from the ground, like the biplanes and the formula classes, and then other races will start in the air. So if you're going to start in the air, it's mandatory to have a formation racing card. So it's what they call a fast card. And you need to have a lot of training to be able to get that. I mean, that's unusual. That's not something that every pilot has. So, and then in the biplane and the formula classes, there's roles that need to be accomplished. And you have to be able to shut off your airplane and be able to make it to an, well, you don't shut it off, but you pull the power back and you have to be able to make it to a safe landing at one of the many surfaces that you're able to land on. So all of those things are checked during your PRS, your pylon racing seminar. Each class has the various ones, especially. And then in 2003, after going through all of this with PRS, I had a mechanical issue with my airplane and I was sidelined that first year. So while I went to PRS in 2003, I didn't compete until 2004. So from 2004 to 2016, I brought home big trophies every year and had a lot of fun, got a lot of sunburns. I have a lot of, you can see my name tag around my neck. I had a lot of pilot badges, a lot of trophies, just had a lot of fun. And it was really, I'm so happy that I was able to do this. And remember I said that thing about volunteering? Well, I wanted to build my brand, basically in this aviation world. So what I did was I volunteered to write a column for In-Flight USA magazine. And I wrote a column there, I'm going to say probably 10 or 12 years. I wrote a column every month about air racing, about air shows, things of that sort. So again, that was my way of volunteering. And it was a good gig. I got a lot of notoriety from it, but I also learned a lot from it. And I was able to interview a lot of the people who I was proud to call my friends and my, my like people who I worked with, my peers. I was able to interview them and find out a little bit more about them, what made them tick. How did you get involved in this? I know how I got involved in this. So I thought that was very interesting, and I'm really glad that I had that opportunity. And then in 2014, I started to think about maybe moving into the sport class. So I bought myself a little RV6, and this is Elsa, and picked her up in Texas and flew her home. And this picture was taken in Bishop, California. And we were joking about how when I came over the border into California, how people were going to know me as soon as I got here. As soon as we landed in Bishop, people were like, "Aren't you Marilyn Dash?" And my co-pilot that was flying back with me was just like, "This is ridiculous." Okay, I know it happens, but I always say that it just happens because I'm female, and like if I was just one of the guys, it wouldn't happen. But I stand out just a little bit more than normal. So one of the things that people ask me about all the time, and I'll bring it up here, is how many women have raced at Reno? And in the 50, now it's more than 52, it's 55 as of 2019. So it'll be 50. Well, we didn't race last year. So in the 55 such races, years that we've been racing at Reno, only 28 women have raced in the various classes that have been out there. So we had 9 in biplanes, 8 in Formula One, 4 sport class, 3 T6, 3 jet, and 1 in the unlimited. And I just put a little note on the bottom. If a woman raced in 2, like Vicky Benzing, for example, she raced in the sport class as well as the jet class. So I only counted her once. But, it seems I was number 17. And in the past 20 years, less than 20 years, 18 years, we've added 11 women to but before that, for 40 something years, we only had 17 women. And I love I interviewed a lot of the women that raced at Reno, and I was super lucky to meet a lot of them and to get to know them. Well, the first woman who ever raced was in 19. I didn't leave the slide in here because I wasn't sure how long I was going to talk about the women part. But her name was Connie Marsh. She was the first woman who ever raced at Reno, and she was in the biplane class. And one thing that happened was she was a little bit of a thing. She was about 5 foot tall and probably weighed about 90 pounds. And the guys were so vicious that they demanded that they put a 50-pound weight in her plane to make her slower, because they were like, "She's so much smaller than we are. This is so unfair." And they made her put a 50-pound bag of a shot in her plane. And she was so not competitive with. She had a Smith mini plane at the time, which is not a very competitive aircraft. And it was just so silly, They didn't go around and weigh each guy. They just weighed this one woman and said, "She's too small. Let's, So anyway, I just get a kick out of that story. And she came back year after year and kept doing it. And she definitely had spunk. A lot of, let me just say, all of the women that have raced at Reno have spunk. So some of the highlights in my career, I don't know if anybody remembers the Harmon rocket. My first full year there, I met John Harmon with the Harmon rocket, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I was like, oh my God, this guy is so famous. There's an airplane named after him. And then I turned around and met Hoot Gibson, who's an astronaut, for those of you who don't know Hoot Gibson. And I thought, yeah, this air racing thing isn't bad. So the next year in 2005, John Harmon introduced me to Tiger DeStefani, who owns Strega. And the next amazing thing that happened to me is Hoot walked by me and said, hey, Dasher, how you doing? And I was like, Hoot Gibson remembered my name from one year to the next. And I actually called my best friend and was like, you're not going to believe what happened to me. So that was very cool. Then in 2007, I had the fastest time in a long time, and I broke into silver. I got a really big trophy. I think that picture I showed was from 2007. And in 2014, I ended up getting, I was working with a crew that kept getting me faster and faster. And we'd make little changes here and little changes there. And slowly but surely, I got up to, from my first year, I was clocked at 146 miles an hour at PRS. And my last year, I did 192. So that was almost 50-mile-an-hour difference. And that was enough. that was good. I was quite pleased with that. More highlights. The people. I have to say that for anybody who knows Bill Kirchhoff, Kirch was the winningest crew chief in Reno history. And he would always say, Marilyn, it's about the people. It's always about the people. And then I had a magazine spread in sport aviation for all the women in aviation at Reno, and Karen Morris wrote that article for us, which was very cool. I was able to do a movie called Air Racers 3D. I was the representative biplane in that movie, and me and Ruby. And I've been able to do some keynote speaking at corporate events and associations and things like that, as well as women in aviation events. So that's all been really fun to do and really enjoyable. So those are some of the highlights of me. And then I had some lowlights, but I don't want to talk about them. So then I moved over to IF1. And the reason why I moved over to IF1 is because biplanes don't seem to be going anywhere. IF1 has really taken the idea that we can basically take a Formula One airplane, put it in a container and ship it anywhere in the world and have a race. So what we've done is in 2013, I introduced Jeff Zaltman to the International Formula One group. And I had known him from doing an article about him when he was with a group called AeroGP. So I got to know Jeff, and they ended up signing a contract with Formula One. And from there, we have gone all over the world. They've been to Spain, we've been to Tunisia, we've been to Thailand twice. And we were actually in Wuhan, China in November of 2018. So how many people do you know that have actually been to Wuhan, China? Well, there's one other person on the call who I saw who's been there as well. So, but yeah, we were in Wuhan. It was And then this year, we're hoping to be able to do the Reno Air Races in September. And then we have a potential race in San Angelo, Texas, which is on Western Texas, right outside of Midland, about 2 hours outside of Midland. And we are working on putting together maybe a 12-city tour. It maybe not in 2022, depending on how COVID expands and retracts. But in the future, I'd say by 2024, we will have a 12-city tour going through North America. And I think that's great. I really think that we're not letting one thing stop us. I mean, we're really continuing to look at where we can go with air racing. This is us in Wuhan. I'm in there somewhere. They gave us these hideous orange jackets that we love and I wear all the time. But it was pouring rain and hideous the entire time. The weather was horrible. And but they treated us like rock stars. And one of the other pilots said to me, because when we go to Reno, we're not treated like we are when we go to Thailand or when we go to Spain. Everyone thinks we're like they think that we're football players and basketball players, like real rock stars. And it's really cool. So this is the beauty of Wuhan, China. You see the sun shining? Neither did we. We were there for probably 8 to 10 days, and I don't think we saw the sun at all. But we pushed it. I wish I had a picture of they used these little tuk-tuks to pull our airplanes out, which was very cool. It was a really fun. And they treated us really, really well. We stayed at a very nice hotel. They carted us back and forth every day. They really tried to take very good care of us. And it was not just the Formula One racing. There was also a full-on air show. And it was a lot of fun to do. And I'm not sure I'd go back to Wuhan again, but I would definitely go back to, doing another one. Here's a pictures of when we were in Thailand. And you could see the pylon here is completely different from what we've had in the past. And these are some of our motley crew, some of our racers that we have in International Formula One. And then if you are interested in going to the air races, or if you're interested in being an air racer, or if you're interested in sponsoring the air races, either Reno itself or one of the classes, or even one of just the racers, I would be happy to make some introductions. We're always looking for volunteers. We're always looking for sponsors. If you are good with a wrench, you might be, the next crew chief. If you're interested in racing with us, one of the first things you need to do is pick your class. Do you have a T6 at home? T6 class might be good for you. So if you have an RV6 at home, possibly the sport class. Get as much training as possible. The most important thing is to be confident in your aircraft. Know where every switch and handle and buzzer is, and just have a lot of time in that seat so that you know what's happening. I remember Hoot Gibson actually took a year or two off from racing in the jet class, and when he went back to jets, they put him through a check ride. Now, this is someone who flew the shuttle, who's flown everything. I wrote an article about him, and I said that the man who's flown everything, and he's flown everything from a casset to the shuttle, and they made him do a check ride to make sure that he remembered where everything was in that aircraft. And I said to him, I said, were you insulted? He goes, insulted? Why would I be insulted? I haven't been in that aircraft in a year. I need to refresh my mind. So that taught me a lot, just the way he said that. But competence in your aircraft is one of the most important things. Then you have aerobatics, being able to roll that airplane and knowing if you get in bad air and you get rolled inverted, knowing how to get out of that is super important. We've seen some crazy things happen on the race course, and because those pilots had aerobatic training, they were able to get out of them quickly and easily. Formation training, super important. Competitive formation flying is what racing basically is. You'll need to go to PRS. You'll need to build a crew. My first probably 3-4 years, I had a very shoddy crew. It was kind of Mayberry. Yeah. And my crew now is amazing. They're still with me. If I go back to race, they'll be standing by my side again. And they're just super awesome people. And I'm very, very proud and very happy to have them as a part of my team. And then you'll have fun. Probably not the first year, maybe not the second, but by year 3, I promise you'll have fun. But it's a lot of work. You're there morning to night. In the early classes, the biplanes and the formula guys, we're there at our briefings at 6:45 in the morning. So you're at the airport no later than 6:30, and you don't go home until way past dark. So you basically at the airport, and then you go home and sleep, and then you're at the airport and you go home and sleep. So not a lot of fun to be had. But yeah, there's a ton of fun to be had. We've had everything from tug races at the airport. We have bands playing. Aaron's on the call, so he knows. We've done the Warlock parties where we had a band playing, and we had smoke oil parties where they take everybody's alcohol, throw it in a big 55-gallon drum, and everybody just gets a little crazy in the evenings. There's always Wednesday night was always, or is it Thursday night was Phil Wallach, one of the photographers, would play video and show photos of history, like all the pictures that he's taken over the past 20-30 years that he's been coming to the races. So things like that, it just becomes a family, and you just know everybody, and you walk down the pit roads, and you're like, hey, oh my God, how you doing? Like everybody knows each other there. It's a good feeling. And then this is Ruby again with her new wheel pants. But that's all that I've prepared. And I really wanted to get some questions and be able to talk you guys, answer your questions about what you're interested in about the air races. And I'm looking for my chat window, which I think has closed.
That sounds good. Marilyn,
Mhm.
thanks for getting things rolling there. I'm going to stop the screen share for just a second here, and we're going to roll into the Q&A, and I'll get things going. See, so I'll inspire people to actually put some stuff into the chat. Can you give us a bit of a picture of the state of air racing, given things like, regardless of the COVID situation, but like Red Bull pulling out and that kind of thing? What's going on in our country and internationally? What's the big picture?
There is a group that has basically bought the Red Bull air racing, not the actual races themselves, but they basically have bought into it, and they're going to reproduce the Red Bull air races in some form. It's not going to be called that. It's going to be called something else. So we're waiting to hear more about what they're doing and what that means, what the calendar will look like. It should be interesting. I've heard things that it might not just be that one at a time trial, that they might be doing something closer to what we do at Reno, with there's more aircraft on the course at one time.
Okay.
Should be interesting. So we're waiting to hear that.
Not wanting to rake over old wounds, but most people, even if they don't know anything about the Reno air races, know about the bad accident that they had. So how has Reno coped with recovering from that situation and, moving forward? What's changed at Reno because of it?
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, because a lot of things have changed, but a lot of things that the fans probably won't see. There are a lot more controls on us. There's a lot more controls on maintaining your aircraft, submitting any changes to the FAA within no later than 6 months before you race an aircraft. There's a lot more testing that needs to be done. And all of these things were being done, but they weren't being like followed as closely, I think it would be a good way to put it. So a lot of we need to have engineering drawings, where last time we didn't really need to. The medicals, we need to have our medical within 3 months of racing at Reno in September. In the past, it would just have to be a valid, maybe it's 6 months. It's like 3 or 6 months, I think, that you need to have it done. I always had it done in July, so I was ready for Reno. But things like that were changed. A little bit of the processing, like a lot of the procedures, some of the procedures were changed. Insurance, of course, has been changed.
Right.
Well, one thing I will say is, if you're 75 years old, you're probably not going to get racing insurance at this point. So
insurance, we won't go into that.
Yes.
Mike Singer has an interesting question. As a racer, how much does all this fun cost? Seems like an expensive hobby.
Yes, it's an expensive hobby. So I'll give you some numbers for on my side. So I bought Ruby in 2003 for $28,000, which is probably a pretty fair. 28? No, that was Daisy. So $32,000, I think I paid for her. And over the years, I put like $10,000 of upgrades into the plane itself. And then there's the cost of updating it every year, the maintenance and the annuals and things like that. So I wasn't really in that deep, but in if you're talking about like the unlimiteds or the jets, mostly the unlimiteds, that's where the money is. It's $150,000 for an engine. I mean, my engine's probably $35,000. So it's a lot different, and it's a lot scale, but our prize money is scaled as well. If you win an unlimited race, you could buy a house. You win a biplane race, and you can, you're set at Starbucks for a year, So we used to joke that you should just put my winnings on my Starbucks card. That's how little it is. So
tell us a little bit about pylon racing in general. I mean, is that an expanding thing, or is Reno going to be the last pylon race? I mean, what's happening?
Well, that's one of the things that we're working with Air Race 1 and the International Formula 1 is getting their own accreditation, so we can actually do races on our own. We don't have to be at Reno. We could do them in places like San Angelo. We're looking at doing closed course pylon racing at air shows, so we can show off what, because everybody goes, oh, air racing, you mean like Red Bull? And I'm like, oh God, we were here before Red Bull. So trying to explain to them that there's 8 of us and what the pylons look like and how it's NASCAR in the sky, for lack of a better term, and why it's different. And I think that there is a place for us. I do, and I think that but I think that if you look around, everyone's looking at their screen right now. So no one's looking at, not right this minute, but kids aren't as excited about the 3D world, and there's even pilotage has gone down with the kids, and they're all looking at I think they would prefer a air racing video game than they would rather actually going to the air races. So I think combating that is a big issue for us.
Well, it's the same in sailing or America's Cup. Regattas are fun to be in when you're sailing the vessel, but they're not a very good spectator sport. But I always thought air racing was pretty good spectator sport.
I thought we did a really good job of keeping the people involved. I mean, the parties that go on, in the boxes and in the stands. We've got your section 3. We've got these fans that have been coming for years and years and years. But unfortunately, we're not building that younger base. It's just not coming up for us.
Laura Winter has an interesting question. She says, last time I was at the races was 20 years ago. Next time I'm there, what are some key things to watch for as a spectator, both in the air and on the ground?
That's great. So I hope that you come this year. Is it Laura? Yes, Laura, I hope that you come this year. And if you do, look for me. And what I'm doing now is I'm doing announcing down at the announcing stand. So you'll hear it over the PA system at the races. And when I'm not doing that, I'm up in the booth and I do the internet live feed with a gentleman named Tommy Sanders, who does the timber, the lumberjack things on NBC Sports Network. If you ever watched the Lumberjack show, he's the voice of the Lumberjack show, and then he does mine too. And bass fishing, he does the bass fishing. So super guy, and he's very super knowledgeable about doing that timing thing that you need for television. So we do that live feed on the internet. So if you're not coming to the races one day, you can watch the beginning of it on the internet. I would say the other thing is come into the pits. The pits is where it's happening. You get to talk to the pilots, you get to talk to the crews, you get to see what they're doing every day and get to see them actually working on the planes. You get to talk to them, ask them questions. One of the things that I like about the crews and the racers at Reno is if there's a kid there that wants an autograph, everything drops and we go talk to the kid. Everybody's very focused on fan support and keeping them happy as well. I see a lot more questions coming in now. It's starting to blink at me.
Well, if you want to pick them off at your...
So how do you know if you've passed a pylon or turned too soon and cut by the pylon? You're supposed to, when you're coming around a pylon, the closest you should be is to be able to look down inside the pylon. As you might know, they're 55-gallon drums and they're attached to 50-foot telephone poles in the ground. So they're probably not quite 50 feet because there's something there's part of it's in the ground. So if you when you go around it, you're supposed to be able to look down into the barrel, and that's the closest that you should be to it. Other than that, you should be outside of that area. If you want to pass, you need to be outside of whoever is that you're passing. You will find out if you cut a pylon when you get on the ground, because the pylon judges will call in any errors, any cuts into the score, and the scorer will tell the timer will tell the scorer. So it goes pylon judge, timer, scorer.
While you look at the other questions, let me follow up on that question. What are the right-of-way rules for airplanes going around a pylon? I mean, are there right-of-way rules?
Yes. Absolutely. So in almost Susan, the tickets go on sale, I think, next week. So just keep checking the Air Race, and then check my the Facebook page as well. I'll put it on there when they come available. I think it's the 7th. They're supposed to come available. So when you're passing, the person who you're coming up to pass, you need to be as let's say you're the lead. So the lead would need to be as close in to on the race course as possible. You're only turning left. So there's no reason for you to even look right. So you just stay on your lane and don't move. You just move, but don't wander outside of that. Just keep your course, keep your line, is what we call it. And the person who's trying to pass you will need to go around you in some way. And what the easiest way is to go just slightly up and outside. So here, if this is the pylon, you need to go up and high to get away from, and then what you're supposed to do is not in the rules, but what it's common courtesy is when the person is clear and they could take the line, you basically do a click on the radio and say you're clear and let them have that line. So there's a perfect line around the pylons, and you want to be able to, whoever has it is, owns it. And if you're trying to pass them, you have to go outside and high to go around them. And then you can take the line back.
Kind of just like in sailing, where the vessel being overtaken is the stand-on vessel, and the overtaking vessel has to yield the right of way.
Exactly. Very much like in sailing. And it's always the slower. No, never mind. That's not it. So Roger just put up a picture. I don't know if you can see him, his portrait picture, whatever it is. And he's got some air racing picture up there now. And Bert Rosenzweig, apparently you've been there and you've been into the pits and you enjoyed that. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Any other questions? Jeff and I could sit here and talk and you guys can eavesdrop.
Well, here's a question. The internet broadcast, is that a subscription or is that a freebie?
It's been free for the past several years. I'm trying to remember Steel, the power tools people who sponsor the air races. They've been paying for me. They pay for me and for Tommy and for the production team. And they pay for the NBC Sports Network, does an airing of the air races, usually in March. So yeah, so that's Steel has been paying for that and been, I work with a company called JM Productions out of Arkansas, and they're the ones that Steel pays for to do this.
Here's another thing that comes to mind too. What kind of new things might be coming? Will there be new classes? Will there be an electric class for air racing or something?
Yes, they're in discussions. What we need now is racing can't begin until there's two of something. And that's why we don't have an electric racing class yet, because there's really not two of anything yet. So one of these days, they are in talks for an electric class. In fact, the person who put together Air Race 1 has a group called Air Race E. And it's funny how the sponsorship for E is so much more, they're more interested in the E than the one, but there's not enough E's to go around. So ultimately, one day we will have electric races as well. But it's not this year. It's not next year. They've got some issues. What they're doing right now is they're taking the Formula One chassis, basically the frame of a Formula One airplane, and putting an electric engine in it and trying to figure out how to do that. So that is being worked out. And there's a group in Texas, a group in Canada that I'm talking to quite frequently about what they're doing. It's just not there yet. Well, if you think about anybody, I know a lot about this, obviously. So if you ever watch Formula, I'm a huge Formula One car racing fanatic. And there's a Formula E class as well. But after so many laps, they need to switch cars because they can't recharge the battery. So they just get out of the car and get another car. Well, that's not right. And you can't do that in the air. So we need to do things, electric has to get a little bit further up than where we are yet. No helicopter racing. It's just insane.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah. Bert Rosenzweig, interesting question. I find it hard to believe that nobody's tried to do a helicopter race, but I could see it be pretty hard to tangle up around a pylon.
Well, if you think about, yes, there would. But you guys, if you air show people, who Chuck Aaron is, and he did that amazing aerobatic routine in a helicopter. So again, it's not going to happen this year or next year, Bert, but maybe down the road.
Well, and there's always rally racing. There are a lot of rallies going on, which are rally style, precision flying type of things. And I don't know, maybe helicopters are involved in that too. One thing you did mention in your presentation that it was going to take 3 years to have fun. Well, what's going on in those first 2 years that are not quite so fun?
Well, it's I'll speak for myself, but I'll also say that I see a lot of other rookies come in, and that you're just a nervous wreck. You're trying to figure out how to fit in. This is organization has been going on for 50 something years, and you're just a pebble in it. So being able to enter, make your mark without, making a fool of yourself is kind of nerve wracking for the first couple of years. We had a guy come in biplanes one year, and he couldn't land his airplane. It took him like 6 or 8 tries to get there, and they just, and it's such a timed event. At 8:02 this is happening, at 9:04 this is happening. I mean, it is, everything is so stacked up during the day for people to not be able to get on the ground and evacuate the runway quickly enough, and then hold something else back, and it's just a mess. So he was spoken to, and he never came back. So I think that the instructor that year just said to him, "You'll need to spend more time with your airplane. You'll need to get better," or something really basic. And the guy just never came back. So, and yes, they should bring back the T28 races. Those were fun. The T28s and the T6s, one of the things that people like about those races are they're so competitive. They're so closely matched that they're a very competitive race. So you don't get to see one guy go by and then 5 minutes later someone else comes by. You see 6 guys coming by at the same time. So that's the T28s and T6s are fun that way.
Are the Reno Air Races pretty much marketed to people who know what they are, or how are they trying to create a presence?
Good question,
that in
Jeffrey.
between races, do they just ramp it up a few months before the race, or how are they?
Yeah, I do a lot, but I am only me. But yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wrote that column for so many years. We did that really fun movie that we did, that 3D movie, that was at all the IMAX theaters, at museums and things around the country. My mom got to see it. She went down to the Air and Space Museum in DC, and she stood up in the middle and she yelled out, "That's my daughter!" And everybody was like, "Lady, lady." So, but we do some things, but we don't do enough, and we don't really know where to market, because we talked about that earlier. The young kids are just not as attracted to what we're doing anymore. So, I don't even know what to. I remember the first time I went and got my medical at the San Carlos airport, and I guess it wasn't the first time because I had already bought the pits, and I was sitting in the waiting room, and there were a couple other pilots in there getting their medicals as well. And I said, "Oh, what do you fly?" And they're like, "I fly for Delta, and I fly for American." And I'm like, "Oh," and they're like, "Who do you fly for?" And I said, I'm a air racer and aerobatic pilot. And they're like, "What?" And I said, "What?" They said, "What kind of airplane do you have?" And I said, "A Pitts Special." And they just looked at me like, "What's that?" And I was like, if you are a pilot and you don't know what a Pitts Special is, it hurts me. And if you've never heard of the Reno Air Races and you're a pilot, it just breaks my heart. But we need to do a better job of even educating other pilots about who we are and what we do. And it's just not there yet.
And I haven't looked recently, but what's the website for the Reno Air Races? Is there content on there that you can pull?
Always. Yeah. It's airrace.org.
Okay.
Air Race, AIRRACE.org. And we're a 501c3, and we need your support as much as ever. And Ken Smith just said, I was rather surprised that Reno didn't do something with the planes movie. I agree. We could do the Reno. I don't work for the Reno Air Races. I am a community advocate and pilot advocate for them is my title. And they don't pay me. I just do these things to try to get the word out about who they are and what they are. And I try to be a good ambassador to the sport, like Naomi mentioned. I really do think this sport deserves to live on. And hopefully we'll get there. But since I've been with Reno, we've been through 4 different marketing groups. So in 20 years, we've been through 4 different marketing groups, and it's, there's got to be a better way. I can't believe that people don't know about who we are. Pilots just cracks me up. So doing what we can, limited budget. You'd be surprised how little money there is in air racing, to tell you the truth. I mean, Red Bull did it because they had something to sell. I mean, Reno doesn't have anything to sell.
Right.
So,
well, and the timing with the pandemic seems to be possibly working out in your favor in terms of lightening up by the fall.
In fact, we were just talking about that. So what we do is we have a list of events in the Reno, Tahoe, Sparks area. And as we're going down the list, we're seeing how many people they're allowing at these events, et cetera. So the big one before us is the Reno Rodeo. And if they allow a full, house at the Reno Rodeo, then we know that we're good to go. There's also the balloon races are right before us. And then there's Hot August Nights, which is oddly enough in August. But so there's a lot of these, thank you. So there's a lot of these events that are building up to us. So I think we have enough time to see how we're going to get along. Fingers crossed.
Well, it's very fascinating. It looks like we've reached the end of our questions here. Let's see. Yeah, hopefully we won't have wildfires or other things impinging on the schedule for races and so forth, which has not been a problem in the Reno area. So hopefully
we did have several years. I've flown. I used to live in the San Carlos, San Mateo area, and then 3 or 4 years ago we moved up here to work more closely with the Reno people, as well as other reasons that we moved up here. And I remember flying home after the races and having to go around some fires in the past. Not many times, but last year was horrible. We couldn't see across the street. So, I mean, it was pretty bad. And as Roger said, we probably would not have been able to compete with the way that the smoke was.
The visibility. Well, yeah, air racing is a pretty intense looking activity, that much speed, that much energy, that close to the ground. So
we have rules about visibility. In fact, one of the things that we were working on in Wuhan was like, they didn't have some of the things that we had in the United States. Can you tell me where the clouds are? What's the height of the clouds? How far is what's the visibility here? And they're looking at us like, what's that? So what are the winds? Winds? So we kind of put our thumbs up and we, gauged, oh, that building is close to our hotel and that's 3 miles away. So, being able to, there's visibility and there's ceilings and there's all these different things that are FAA requirements as well as IF1 requirements.
Well, that's fascinating. And so we're looking forward to the Reno Air Races this year. We know they're going to happen. And so we're looking forward to them. That rodeo is going to happen. So we've got to have the Reno Air Races.
It's so funny. The first time I went to the rodeo, I said, anybody who was there, I'm like, by the way, this is my first rodeo. So
well, there you go.
Get it? Never mind. So anybody who's going to come out this year, please look for me. I'll be in the Formula One hangar, which is the rah-rah hangar in the pits, or I'll be at the top of the grandstands doing the announcing. So would be great to see everybody. I know I'll see Ken. I know I'll see who else is here. Willie, Naomi. So Aaron, I hope I'll see you this year. Roger. So hopefully I'll see, and Susan, you guys have to come this year.
So everyone here in this talk's got an invitation to go see Marilyn at the Reno Air Races. So you've got an inside.
Come on by.
So, well, thank you, Marilyn Dash, for presenting to us the inside scoop of the Reno Air Races. It's a fascinating event. We hope it continues on for the rest of the century, if not another couple centuries. And
that'd be great.
Look forward to seeing you at the air races this fall. So
sounds good.
I'd like to thank everybody for joining us for Hill or Hangar Talk. If you appreciated the talk, give Marilyn a bit of a hand clap using the reaction button, or a thumbs up, or a heart, or whatever you want to do. And we will look forward to seeing you again here for Hill or Hangar Talk 2 weeks from now, when we host Micah Sanchez and a flight instructor in Paradise on April 14th. So until then, stay safe, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you here at the Hiller Aviation Museum. We are open on the weekends now, and you can come and visit us for trains and planes. Thank you, and we'll see you then.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jeffrey, for putting this together.
You're welcome. Thanks, Marilyn.